Hello, everyone. Welcome to our late, but better late than never conversation on Johto's 25th anniversary. Before we officially jump in, I would love to kind of just have a little bit of a chat. So I know we talked about this just a little bit, and I don't know if we're going to be able to kind of get into it in full. But before we introduce the cast, I would love to have a couple minutes of just back and forth on, who we think is kind of the most infamous Johto trainer. I don't know about you. I feel like Johto is one of those regions. I want to put it gently, but I feel like sometimes there's just a lack of good mental health care in Johto. I'll be honest, between Claire and Whitney, I, as a young trainer, could not stand either of those. I know they improved them a bit in the games, but who wants to jump in first on who is the most infamous Johto trainer?
Well, Whitney's Miltank is so evil that I don't say Whitney's Miltank normally because that is a swear word. So I would say Whitney. She's also a brat and very annoying, and I hate her Miltank. Her Clefairy's fine, but her Miltank, oh man, bad memories.
You know, I will say she got a lot better when I got older and I learned about Fury Cutter being handy against her. But I do say that I don't often play through Heart Gold and Soul Silver as much, especially after they gave her Milk Tank milk drink. And then I think that she also got Attract in the Heart Gold and Soul Silver games. And yeah, no, not a fun time.
I think
How about you, Death?
there's a fun dichotomy here because you've got famous, infamous, we're talking like difficult, because as soon as you said infamous trainer, I hate to say it, but I first thought of youngster Joey.
Whoa. I mean, Joey's awesome. Joey's a legend.
But for what reason? Like, he's not hard, but he could be hard to listen to.
But top 2% Rattata.
But it's just a Rattata. I don't know. It's kind of funny because I didn't have youngster Joey in my original playthrough. So there were other trainers calling and pestering me. It wasn't until I got more online that I understood the joke around youngster Joey. So to me, he is strictly a meme character, which to be fair, he is.
Oh, he totally is.
If I had to say like a properly infamous trainer of Johto, it's going to be an odd answer because in hindsight, he's not that hard. But when I was a kid, Chuck of the Signwood Gym, for whatever reason, gave me a ton of trouble. Didn't have as much trouble with Whitney, oddly enough, but it was Chuck. That was the gym leader that gave me the most trouble. That dynamic punch, it's only 50% accurate. Nah, hit me every time.
You want to know the secret to Whitney's Miltank? I don't know if this is a thing in base gold, silver, crystal, but go to the game corner, gamble a little bit, then go and buy a Dratini, go in, click Dragon Rage, win. That's how you get that's how you get rid of the Miltank.
Gambling is the answer.
Gambling's the answer to everything.
Sounds like an endorsement of gambling to me.
Wasn't there a point where you couldn't get the coin case until like after the Team Rocket stuff?
I think they give it to you after you do the rocket stuff in the basement of Goldenrod on your first run, your first romp through it.
If I recall, the coin case is literally just sitting on the floor in the basement.
Yep.
I feel like I've also got to say, because we've talked about the phone calls and things, don't know if she was ever a trainer, but the player mom, in my opinion, speaking of phone calls, not only does she harass you on a regular basis, but she also spends your earnings on items. That always bugged me as a kid.
So in the original, in Gold, Silver, and Crystal, she bought you decorations for your room, many of which you could only get from her.
Mhm.
So that was kind of awesome. In the remakes, it was less awesome. Thanks, Mom.
I distinctly remember every time you got that message, or I'm sorry, that call from Mom saying, "Hey, I saw something, I bought it for you." And I was always excited to know whatever I got, because she didn't say it. She just said it was either in the PC or it's in your bedroom. And I was always excited to find out. And I was even more excited when it was a new doll for my bedroom.
Wasn't the last one she got you like a Snorlax doll or something, and it took up like most of the room?
I don't remember if the last one was the Snorlax doll or if it was the feathery bed or something like that. But yeah, it was something big.
Best mom ever.
Right. Well,
We should
I
probably
know that-
introduce ourselves, folks. Sorry.
Oh, I was just about to get on that.
Sorry,
Um,
Rhode.
No name.
All right. Well, welcome everyone once again officially to the cast. I am Roadhawk, your humble host. Of course, we have Caps, who is our producer of sorts, always does a lot of things that I have no idea how to do, so please always give him a shout out if you want. With that, though, I do have a quick introduction. So, as well, I'm always the person who, well, not always, I am one of the people who uploads videos to YouTube, often the Pokemon Masters stuff. I do have a introductory icebreaker for everyone officially, which I have to ask: if Sunkern just never existed, would you be better off, or do you think they'd give us another abomination? I'm going to Death to introduce yourself first.
Howdy, folks. I'm Magnedeth. I am a former editor-in-chief of Bulbapedia from 2010 to 2012, and I've been involved with Bulbagarden and the Pokemon community ever since 2007. And it's kind of funny you came to me first, because I did play Gold and Silver pretty much at release, so I have lots of memories of these games. And I think it's kind of funny that people always point at Sunkern as being this absolutely terrible Pokemon, but in the grand scheme, it may be statistically terrible, but it's just, a bad grass type as opposed to other Pokemon which have less use to me. So I think, to answer the question specifically, would they give us something worse? In my opinion, they already have. I mean, I think Magikarp is technically worse. Feebas, even Wishy-Washy before it turns into the big monster thing. I think there are already worse Pokemon than Sunkern. So Sunkern may have like a little bit of a joke, but nah, we've had worse.
And we have our other guest. I hope I do not mispronounce this, but Ezlo, would you like to go next?
That's correct. Yes, hello. I'm EzloSpirit. Nintendo nerds might recognize Ezlo as being from The Legend of Zelda. I am relatively new to Bulbagarden. I am currently a moderator on the Discord server. But my background is The Legend of Zelda. I've been part of the ZeldaUniverse.net community since 2008, and I was the producer of the podcast, the ZU Cast, for several years. So it's podcasting is like coming home. As for that strange question, I am clueless when it comes to competitive Pokemon. I'm into Pokemon for the cute critters. So this is the first I'm hearing anything negative about Sunkern, and I would respond with, "How dare you? Sunkern is a precious little seed baby, and must be loved. And that is my answer.
Love the question. And Caps, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'd love to. Hi, guys. My name's Caps. You may recognize me from, well, this Twitch channel where I stream every Thursday and Saturday. I also do work on the forums as a forum administrator and help Rhode with this here Bulbacast. And to answer your question, I think we'd be better off. I don't like Sunkern. He looks at me funny, and I don't like that.
What a hater.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm going to also... Oh. Go ahead.
Oh, Ezlo just said they were confused, and Death said, well, such a hater. And I was like, yeah, that's me.
Just what I expect from a Chikorita fan.
All right. As we get into it, I feel like Johto is definitely one of those regions. It is one of the greats in many people's minds. It is one of the more notorious in other people's minds, or for some of us, it is a mix of both. I'm going to go on the record, say I think all Pokemon are beautiful in their own way and kind of awful in their own. But before we go into it, I'd also love to encourage chat as we go. If you want, let us know what you think of Sunkern and Sunflora. And as we go as well, if you so choose, you can keep track of how many trainers I don't remember because of the last 6 casts. I think I've forgotten about 90% of trainers' names. But as we go, I'd really love to open this up to our introductory question being our history with Johto. And I don't want to make this too long-winded just for the sake of time because we have so many great questions to go over. And for our cast and our audience, as a reminder, this is just a part 1. Johto has been around for a long time, has had many different honorariums. We want to make sure to do a part 2 at some point. But Johto in itself, I believe this was the 25th anniversary recently, which is huge. It's been with us a long time. And Ezlo, I'm going to open up to you. What is your history with Johto? And within it, did you enjoy it? When did you first play the games? And was it your first region?
It was my first region, at least game-wise. So my first exposure to Pokemon was whatever mornings, Kids WB, the anime. And I think that was probably only a few months before Gold and Silver came out. So at that point, Gen 1 was winding down, but I didn't understand how any of that worked. So my exposure was, there were 150 Pokemon. So my brother was a huge fan at that time, although he very shortly afterwards did a 180 and started irrationally despising the entire franchise for about 20 years. Not even worth going into, but I got my first game, which was Gold, and I saw the starters and I was like, what are these? I have never seen these before. I had a poster of the 150 Pokemon on my bedroom wall, and I had no idea what those starters were. So I was very confused, but eventually I sort of figured things out, and it was probably my first RPG. So I was very immersed in the entire experience of raising these monsters that were very cute, and and the world felt very alive as well, even though it was 8 bits because of the clock and the days of the week. So it kept me coming back for more. And I think I was going to say something else. It might come back to me. But yeah, so that was my first experience with Johto. And they hold a very special place in my heart. I tear up every time I hear the new Barktown theme because childhood. And so that's that. Also Togepi. Enough said.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for sharing. Wonderful look down memory lane. Gonna be honest with you, as though I can relate to a good chunk of that. I'm sure many of us can. And just want to give a special shout out. Yeah, definitely when I was younger, I was still very confused by a lot of things. Not super proud to say that I was confused for quite a long time by the Hoenn anime's reference of Arbok evolving into Seviper. Definitely learning around the Johto Hoenn ages. But Death, do you want to jump in, answer the same questions?
Yeah, I mean, my history is that I was obviously really big into Red and Blue growing up, and when it was announced there was going to be more games with more Pokemon, I was all over it. And Gold and Silver are probably the first games of my entire life where I actually paid attention to pre-release information. Checking out magazines and the internet was a thing, but not particularly well. Not easy to surf back then. So finding information online was quite difficult. But I did my best to find that too. I was all over these games, and sure enough, when they came out, I was completely engrossed in my Pokemon Silver cartridge, which I still have to this day, and I I absolutely loved it from the moment I turned it on my teal Game Boy Color, and it's just it's been stuck with me ever since. I still absolutely love those games, and they kind of hold a special place in my memory and my heart that I'm never gonna forget.
Once again, thank you for sharing. Always love to hear that. I'm gonna jump in just real quickly, and just to add to this little bit of nostalgia and beautiful phrasing that's jumping in. I've been with Pokemon since Red and Blue. I remember being that kid, family outings, family events. I would sit on the couch playing Red and Blue often till I fell asleep. But for me, I think there was something really magical that happened with Johto. In that, I mean, I remember being a kid and for the first time seeing the cartridges of Gold and Silver and seeing these new mythical birds that just seem to fly and defy nature. I still remember my first experience of seeing Ho and Lugia on the Game Boy screens and Game Boy Color, I believe, at that point. And it was just this magical experience. And I will say, I have always been a Cyndaquil kind of guy. I die-hard Quilava and Typhlosion fan. But for me, I really feel like Johto was a region that did some really awesome things with just the concept of Pokemon. And as we go on, I want to continue to try to capture this magic and move into a question that I think is going to be really valuable to this conversation, which is, what is your favorite Johto Pokemon? I know there's a lot of critiques out there around Johto, especially compared to later generations, but I'd love to open this up. And since I started with Ezlo the first time, Death, do you want to start us off?
It's funny you mentioned that because I knew this question was coming, and I'm just looking at the list of Johto Pokemon, and there's so many that I like that I'm not kidding. It is so hard for me to pick a favorite Johto Pokemon. Typhlosion, Feraligatr, Caesar, Heracross, Steelix. But if I had to nail it down to one, which is very, very hard to do, it would probably be Houndoom. Aside from just being a big old doggo, which is hard not to like, uh, it was a great introduction to the dark type. a fire-breathing evil dog is just fantastic. Also bolstered by the fact the anime showed us that it wasn't actually just evil. It's just, just the way it is. He's actually just a dog like anybody else. So I really like Houndoom. Solid stats, fun to use in the game. There's really not much I don't like about Houndoom, although I will give a special shout out before I shut up to Mareep, the most cuddly boy of Johto.
Yes, I too am a dog.
Oh, all right. Thanks,
Really?
Caps.
Thought you cut out there for a moment.
No, that's all I had to say.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Death was just like, he's just a cute dog, just like everyone else. And I was like, yeah, me too.
Did I say? I don't think I said that.
Yeah, you did.
Did I?
I think so.
I feel like if there's ever a YouTube clip of this, that's that. Just,
Yeah.
I'm a dog.
They did our work for us.
Caps, you do a
anyways.
great job of making really fantastic out of context clips very easy.
I this is my fatal flaw, yes.
I do also want to say, Death, great choices, by the way. Houndoom, all-time classic Johto. Love Mary. I'm gonna wait to gush, but I'm gonna go to Ezlo first.
Oh, is it my gushing time? Because
Absolutely.
as I alluded to before, Togepi. When Togepi hatched on the anime, something inside me like was born that day, and since then, Togepi.
Just a few words, but you gotta love it. So there have been so many wonderful choices made. I'm gonna have to give an honorarium as well. I will say probably one of my all-time favorite designed Pokemon has got to be Umbreon. I love that boy. He is such a I love the design. And me as a kid, I latched onto the dark type at a young age. I was the angsty Edgar Allan Poe loving kind of kid. So if I'm gonna be opposite, say Umbreon. But you know what? I gotta go with an honorarium. And to this day, I know Clodsire is out there and there is Quagsire, but I love the little derpy boy that is Wooper. He's just a weird, awkward guy, and I absolutely love it.
Whoopa. Good choice.
So
Mind if
as
I
we
jump
go
in
as
on this
well-
one real quick? I feel like I need
Oh.
to.
I was gonna check, but go right ahead.
So, and I also want to kind of add on the initial question too, is a little bit of context. So for me, I did not grow up with Johto. I grew up with Hoenn, and also Sinnoh. So for me, Johto was kind of this mythical region that was like there, and I knew the Pokemon from it, but I never played it because I just didn't have access to it when I was a kid. So the way I had access to a lot of the Johto Pokemon was through the spin-offs, Ranger and especially Mystery Dungeon. And that's where my love for Chikorita came from, was Mystery Dungeon, not necessarily Johto itself. But yeah, so I mean that's obviously it's my brand. I'm the Chikorita guy, so he's definitely by far and beyond my favorite Johto Pokemon. But if I had to pick some other shoutouts, I do like Wooper a lot. He's a really good guy. I do like Mareep a lot, so shout out to you two for mentioning those two lovely little ones. And I really like Espeon and Umbreon as well. And they're interesting because I kind of associate them more with Gen 3 almost, because they're the starters in Coliseum. But it's still, they're still like cool evolutions and good kind of like sun and moon kind of vibes, dark and light. Just cool additions to the EV family and the Johto Pokedex in general.
Absolutely. Thank you for shouting out Colosseum, by the way. One of my favorite games ever since I first played it. Um, I do want to also emphasize, like, I really do feel like Johto, especially in the light of modern regions, definitely gets a lot of hate for some very odd reasons. Obviously older games hard to compete against, but I do feel like the era of Pokemon design that was Johto just has a real beauty to it. And I think another really important thing to emphasize with Johto is kind of what makes it stand out. There's a lot to Johto that's very unique. I know many people reference that you could go back to Kanto and, it had this weird kind of level cap system. But the first thing that I really want to emphasize here is I feel like it was Pokemon's first like steps into expanding beyond what Red and Blue could be, obviously, because there's the next game. There's a lot of really unique things about Johto that go into it, but I kind of want to break this up to a couple points. Um, in this, I'm going to start with Eslo. Do you think there's anything that really stands out in Johto, from the story to the trainers or the region layout? And why do you think that?
Well, I touched on this earlier, but uh, probably more than any other game in the entire series since then. Uh, the world of Gold, Silver, and Crystal, Heart Gold, and Soul Silver feels alive because it's so tied in with uh, the clock and the weekdays. So in that sense, it was almost like Animal Crossing, but Pokemon. And so it offered a level of immersion I had never seen before, and that I've seen from very few games since. And just thinking about, like, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, gotta play my game. It's the bug catching contest. Or, you know, Mondays are, I forget what happened on Mondays. I remember that the haircut place was closed on Mondays, and that's how I learned that that is a normal thing in real life. Uh, but it was just, it felt like it was changing all the time, even though it really was just on a weekly cycle. So every Monday was the same, but just from day to day, there was something new to find. Uh, that you wouldn't have found just one day earlier. Like Fridays, Lapras in Union Cave. I don't even think that was ever explained, but it was cool and it was something to look forward to. So, uh, and I was kind of taken aback when I first played Ruby because I was expecting more of that, and it felt very disconnected from all of that. So, it's something that I kind of understand why they went away from, because there's a lot of planning that goes into deciding schedules for anything, but that level of immersion and that level of wanting to keep coming back to the game throughout not just one week, but wanting to play the bug catching contest over and over, yet you can only do that certain days. uh I would love that to come back, because that would keep me coming back long after I complete the story.
Wonderfully said. Yeah, I think there is a lot about Pokemon that can change between game to game. So often it seems like certain features are in one region and they don't return. And I think that's also part of what makes Pokemon so special from region to region. Um, but I'd love to kind of break into Death. I'm happy to go last again on this kind of aspect, but as someone who's played Pokemon for so long, Death, what are your thoughts about what made Johto stand out?
A lot of the things that Eslo said, I also agree with. The days of the week meant that it almost felt like no 2 days of the game were the same, and in a roundabout way, they technically weren't. And I saw somebody in the chat, the SPM 196, mentioning the day night made it more feel like real life and immersive, and I agree with that too. It was so amazing to see the visuals of the game change depending on the time of day, which might sound kind of silly, but again, we're talking about a game from 1999 on a Game Boy, so that was fantastic. And then the thing that really stuck out to me was when you're exploring Johto, the towns all have a really unique feel to them. Partially because the music of Gen 2 is astonishing, and also because each town has a unique design. And the way I describe Johto as a whole is it is a mood. It is a cozy place to be. It's just it's a warm and inviting region, and I genuinely don't think any other region in the series gives me the same level of immersion, despite the fact that I'm talking about a game that's only been available to us in, you know, what basic graphics on a Game Boy or at best on the DS. And don't get me wrong, it looks great in Heart Gold Soul Silver, but uh, it's still so well done that it's just a really cozy region, and it's some place that I can turn on a game and know I'm just gonna have a good time, even if I'm losing constantly to somebody. It doesn't matter. It's just a nice place to be.
Absolutely. Once again, great points. Johto, Johto was a region for me that, even though I don't play through it very often, it does have a magic to it, and I think there's something really great about Johto. Even actually, I would say especially in Hard Gold, Soul Silver. I think as the budgets got bigger, um, was that the Pokemon Company really wanted to create something that would stand out. I remember in Heart Gold, Soul Silver, the moment when you go up to the burnt tower. I believe it was a burnt tower, and then I cannot see already mark it against me. I can't remember a specific location name. The tower where you get the items to go see Ho or Lugia, with the fallen leaves on the ground that are like red, robust oranges and reds and things. I feel like Pokemon really has a love for Johto, and I think as developers, that's very obvious. For me, that's always stood out. One thing I do want to mention on this particular topic, I think as a region as well, for me, even though it's simple and it definitely got to flesh out, Johto, I don't know how to say this other than Johto felt like a region that celebrated its culture. It's part of the reason I love Alola. The Sun and Moon games are some of my favorite, partly because there's such a feeling of interconnectedness so often. I know a lot of people don't like those games, but for me, when I play a game and there's a story and it feels like it's actually happening, like in a Pokemon world, there's something really magical about that. And Johto felt like a great introduction to that. I've talked about Whitney and, kind of the frustration I have with her. I'll be honest, I feel like she was probably a take on a comedic, or at least attempted comedic take on like the City Slickers being, a little emotional in a lot of media that happened around that time. But for me as well, I'm going to emphasize, they still do have some of my favorite gym leaders. I know he or she, I can never remember, but Bugsy, I thought was a lot of fun, especially as a bug type gym leader that gave me a hard time. Not as much as Whitney, but also kind of just the idea of Chuck hanging out, just lifting weights, not looking like not Dragon Ball Z, Bruno. But there was a lot of life to it, and the Heart Gold Soul Silver's games did that. And so I definitely don't. I want to save a question that I had as we go. But speaking of Johto's immersiveness and kind of the feel of the region, I know this isn't something that was on our list of questions, but I think this is a great question to ask in a Johto 25th anniversary podcast, which is, what region, what city would you want to live in Johto most? I know the anime depictions are vastly different than the actual games, which makes a lot of sense. But you know what, Caps, we can also encourage the audience to jump in here. But I want to actually pull in our producer, Caps, and see if you have a city in Johto you'd want to live in.
Oh man, there's quite a lot actually. I like the secluded beach town vibes of Cianwood City. The blossoms of Cherry Grove, Ecruteak, and it's like kind of like old town kind of vibes, like very traditional Japanese style, like old kind of town. But I think probably the one I'd want to live in the most is Olivine, just because it's it's like Cianwood, but just a little bit more bustling, a little bit more busy. The lighthouse is there, Jasmine is there. Gotta shout out my gal Jasmine. But that's probably the one for me. And close to the Whirl Islands, maybe you can spot Lugia in the sky. Feels nice.
Awesome. Death, how about you?
Cianwood City. I'm a big fan of the beach in real life, and I would love to live there. And if I had my choice, I'd definitely live in that little beach town, far away from the rest of the region, far away from the hustle and bub. Just the ocean, the sand, and Pokemon.
Ezlo, how about you?
When I was a kid, I literally used to imagine myself having a house or something in Goldenrod City, which is a little weird for me because I'm very much not a city person. I do not do well with lots of noise and crowds, but I feel like at least the way it was portrayed in the early games, Goldenrod really, probably for technical reasons, does not actually have that many people in it. So that would be my ideal city because there's a lot to do. You got Game Corner, you got the radio, giant department store. You also have the underground where there's more shops and other things to do. But not too many people. I mean, I guess in real life, if it's a city, it would probably have more than 12 people or however many people are in it. But I just feel like having access to all of those fun things to do would make it a nice place to live.
So, to give my 2 cents, I'm not gonna lie, I was cheating a little bit, looking at a couple images of each city. I am someone who I really like the aesthetic of Azalea Town and of Ecruteak City. And if I had to choose one, I feel like I would go Ecruteak. I know there's lots of ghosts and things there, but I am someone, like I said, I love a town connected to its culture. I love all that, and I feel like Akratic City. It's got just enough trees. It's got the history. It's so connected to so many other areas like Goldenrod and Olivine and other things. So that's where I would go, in all honesty. But I know we're going to be checking in with our chat here in just a second. So feel free, if you have any questions already that we haven't answered, let us know. We'll make sure to do that, as well as let us know what you're thinking. And Cass, so what are people saying so far?
So a couple of things that I wanted to shout out, just a couple of messages that I wanted to shout out, and then I'll get to the question that we have. So we posed the question earlier, what's your favorite Johto Pokemon? Lots of people were responding with stars. For Alligator from Dark Wolf and Totodile from Norman's. Soapy, of course, shouted out Crobat, which I think is another fantastic Johto Pokemon that slipped my head earlier because I constantly forget it is a Johto Pokemon. And then I also wanted to shout out Thespian's comment about the immersion of the region, just in general, the day and night cycle. I think one thing that to keep in mind as well is, and this touches on kind of like what I can't remember who was saying. I think it might have been Ezlo, about how the developers really kind of showed their love for, like, they poured their heart and soul and their love for the region into the games. Actually, it might have been you, Rhode. I can't remember. Regardless, I think it's something to keep in mind is that Johto and Gold and Silver were developed to be the last Pokemon games of their time, right? They did not expect Red, Blue to kick off like they did. And Gold and Silver, you can see it very clearly in their design. Obviously, having the callbacks to Kanto and being able to travel to Kanto afterwards makes it very complete. Kind of like setting it 3 years after the events of Red, Blue, and Green kind of gives a nice conclusion to the story of those games. You see what the old characters are up to, right? And the evil team, right? And we'll go into some of that, I'm sure. But also kind of what you and Ezlo were talking about, Death, the kind of like the day-to-day kind of changes to the region that kind of make you keep picking up the game on, Tuesday, Thursday for the bug contest. You know what I mean? Like, they included something in there to make you constantly want to come back to the region, constantly want to come back to the games, give you reasons to pick them up again, because they thought that this would be the last Pokemon game, So if we're going to go out, we might as well give them as much content as we can, encourage them to play for as long as they can, because we don't think we're going to develop another game, right? I think that if there's anything Johto does right, it's immersion. And I think we really kind of nailed on that point. So I wanted to shout out Thespian's comment as well. The one question that we did have comes from Soapy, who says, what was your reaction when they first introduced shinies?
Oh, I love that question. So I'm gonna be honest. Playing the older games, my first reaction about finding out there are shiny Pokemon was so much like on the playground kind of thing. Like the cartoon recess, the legends, the lore of like the 90s and things about, did you know there's a shiny Gyarados? Oh my gosh, there's no shiny Gyarados kind of thing. And so when I saw it, I'll be honest with you, I was not entirely sure what was going on, but oh my gosh, did I throw so many Pokeballs at that thing, afraid to kill it. And to this day, when I see that Gyarados, I try all I can to capture it, because it also becomes a really solid Pokemon at that point in the game. Anyone else want to jump in?
I will say that shiny Pokemon to me have been surprisingly elusive in all of my years of playing, and not including Legends Arceus, I have caught a total of 3 shiny Pokemon in all of my games. 0 of them, not including the Red Gyarados, were in Gold and Silver. So shinies to me in the original games were almost as unobtainable as the Poke Gods, speaking of recess rumors, if you will. So to me, even then and a little bit now, they always just kind of existed in my mind as this literally a legend, a thing that just couldn't exist. And I know they're there. I know they're definitely there. But I just never seen one in all the times I've played through a Gen 2 game and the few times I've played through Heart Gold Soul Silver. Red Gear is the only one I've ever gotten in Johto. So to hear about them though for the first time, I was like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. This super rare chance of an alternate color Pokemon? How could that be? And to find out they were real was always pretty surreal. But unfortunately, I don't have any sort of like major connection with them because I've never, unfortunately, had the experience of finding one myself.
And I'm in a similar boat as Death because, well, so Gold Silver were my first games. So when I saw I always knew it as the Red Gyarados. I did not know what shiny Pokemon were. I didn't realize their significance until several years later. And I never even found one in the wild besides the shiny Gyarados until Black 2. So this was over a decade later. And to this day, that is the only one I've ever found out of that before the Switch games made them less impossible to find. So yeah, I don't really have a relationship with shiny Pokemon. They kind of were just like this legendary thing that was harder to get than actual legendary Pokemon. So yeah, it's weird. It's shiny Pokemon are still kind of weird to me.
I will give a shout out to the shiny Growlithe I found in Sun and Moon that roared me away. So a shout out to that Growlithe.
No.
Yep.
Oh, I have so many of those stories. Couple quick note. Scarlet and Violet, the first full shiny odds Pokemon I found was a Voltorb. It promptly exploded before I could even catch it. Black and White, I ran across a shiny Gothita, had no Pokeballs. The only games that I've actually reliably caught a shiny Pokemon were Pokemon Go and Pokemon Masters. My history with shiny Pokemon is honestly one of contempt for many reasons. Even then, I've said this before, I love my shiny green bean in Pokemon Masters. I do not need like 15 of them. So, shout out though, did just get a shiny Eevee in an egg. So that was pretty cool. Yeah. So, anything else, Gaps?
I will.
I just wanted to say real quick that we have some pretty astonishing luck going on here. So Caps needs to save us from this shiny luck. Please, Caps, tell us the regal stories of your mountains of shiny Pokemon.
Well, I'll tell you of the regal stories of mountains of shiny Pokemon bodies that happen during my Saturday morning Mystery Dungeon streams, because in Rescue Team DX, you can encounter shiny Pokemon. They are high odds on like the challenge Pokemon, the ones that appear as exclamation marks on the map, but you need a very specific item to recruit them. And I never have that item, and I never have not that I never have that item, I just never have it on the right Pokemon that I'm using to attack the shiny Pokemon with. So I have yet to recruit a single shiny in Rescue Team DX, having encountered probably at least 15. So there's that. Although, when it comes to actual shiny luck, there was one stream on Bulba where I got a full odds shiny Zigzagoon in Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, and I was so surprised by it that I couldn't clip it because I was cursing. So there's that, I guess.
Oh, I should say, Legends of Arceus, I had a brief hatred of Psyduck for a while, and that made me feel sad. I found a shiny Baniri in the wild, full odds. Psyduck attacked me, so I couldn't get it, and I forgot Pokemon Emerald. Found a shiny Rhyhorn in the Safari Zone. Ran away from me before I could catch it.
Man, we are really stewards of bad luck, aren't we?
I can go on and on. There are more than that, trust me. But I want to get us back on track. And I think, this is a perfect segue into Pokemon and the rarity of Pokemon, which is, and this might be a hard question to answer, might be easier for some, what is Johto's best legendary? And I'm actually gonna, Caps, I want to pull you in on this one.
What is Johto's best legendary? Well, what are the Johto legendaries? You've got the 3 dogs. You've got Oh, Lugia, and I count Celebi, even though it's a mythical, whatever's a mythical.
Caps, they're not dogs.
The wolves, 4-legged creatures.
They're all
beasts.
felines.
Cats? Really? They're cats?
Yes.
I always thought they were dogs.
No.
All right. Well, anyway, I have a very soft spot towards Suicune, because when I first got into Pokemon, I got in through the TCG, not through the games or anime, and I had this really cool Suicune card that is apparently super rare, and I just thought it was a really cool Pokemon, just based on the art from that card. But nowadays, I do tend towards Lugia. Big, massive arms, cool little guy, the song from the movie, like, it's all there. I just love that guy. He's cool.
Ezla, how about you?
Johto's actually not the region I think of when people ask me, "Oh, what are your favorite legendary Pokemon?" I don't know why. Because compared to later gens, there just weren't that many. But I would probably have to say either Lugia, probably because I've used Lugia in the vast majority of my parties in those games, or maybe Raikou. I always thought Raikou was the coolest of the trio. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't usually think about the Johto legendaries. Perhaps ironically.
What about you, Death?
I'm really glad I was picked last for this because I don't really have a good answer either, unfortunately. And I think part of the reason for that is, yeah, Johto only has 6 legendaries. One of them being Celebi, which we never get to use. The birds and the beasts. So, and even then, the roaming beasts are iconic to the games. But in all of my playthroughs of Gen 2, Entei was the first one I ever ran into. So I do have kind of a special connection with Entei, but I'm gonna be honest, it's fine. Not a big Entei fan. Meanwhile, Raikou, I like electric types, obviously. Raikou is the one that has eluded me the most. In all of my playthroughs of Gen 2, I think I've encountered it once. And that's the one game I had a completed Pokedex on it. But of all the legendaries, probably Lugia again. I just love its design, and I also love its cry. I'm a big fan of Pokemon cries, and I'm not saying the other ones have bad Pokemon cries, but Lugia's cry is so iconic to me. I can hear it in my head, and I can also hear it every single time I hit the button on the start screen of my Pokemon Silver game.
I also want to quickly jump in and add, because Death was talking about Lugia, shout out to XD, Gale of Darkness. Shadow Lugia, good guy.
Absolutely. I'm gonna highlight I know they're may not be the most popular, but I gotta highlight Ho-Oh and Entei. Entei has been one of my favorites ever since like the Mystery of the Unknown movie. It was just such a cool, like personally one of my favorite Pokemon movies. But for me as a kid, kind of watching Entei be that mystical creature, plus my inner little edgelord loves the fact that he's tied to volcanoes and like can just make them erupt. Um, but on a lore aspect, I'm not gonna lie, I love the story of Ho-Oh. Like the being of rebirth made essentially Raikou, Entei, and Suicune. Um, it's just such a cool thing. I kind of wish they had done more with him. I know he doesn't have like for competitive players, doesn't always have the best moveset, all these things. Plus, as stated, I love Houndoom. I love fire types and dark types, and yeah. So in that though, um, as we go, because I know we've been going for a little bit,
Before we
I want to
move on,
highlight a
real quick.
couple. Oh,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
Shark King in chat said something I want to touch on. Suicune was the first legendary you remember seeing having its own battle theme, and I'm racking my brain. I think it might be true. I think
It is.
Suicune is the first one to have its own unique battle theme, which I think is a really interesting thing. That it not even Ho-Oh and Lugia, the box art legendaries of the original box art legendaries got their own theme, but Suicune did. So kind of an interesting thing to point out there.
Absolutely. And that's actually a great transition to my next question, which is which city, gym, or encounter had the best music in the Johto games?
Too hard.
Since it's such a hard question, I'm gonna throw myself on the fire first. Um, so I'm not gonna lie. As much as I love Ho-Oh and Entei, couldn't even think of the name. Um, as we go, I will say one of the most iconic moments for me in any Pokemon game was, I believe it was Cyanwood City, in Pokemon Crystal, and that moment where you see Suicune just hanging out at the top of the area. Uh, that's kind of stuck with me, and so Cyanwood City has always been a city where I love the music. I also got to highlight, I know it might not be the most popular, but I love listening to the Blackthorn City music and the Dragon's Den music. But in this, Ezlo, you want to go first?
Sure. So I am a huge listener to Pokemon soundtracks. Video game music is basically most of my music diet. So I've listened through the entire Heart Gold Soul Silver soundtrack, which includes the Game Boy Sounds versions of the basically the original Gold and Silver soundtrack as well. I've listened through that a million times, and probably for the best, very little of it actually stands out as being better than anything else to me. I'd say purely for nostalgic purposes, again, Goldenrod City's theme will also make me tear up, especially the 8-bit version, and of course the new Barktown theme I mentioned before. But I'd say as far as just music that made me go wow, I think, and this goes back to the last question, where Suicune's battle theme in Crystal, where I think it was shared among the three legendary beasts, and especially for Raikou and Entei, which were still roaming in Crystal. You would be walking through tall grass, and all of a sudden, instead of the usual wild battle theme, you'd hear this and you're like, oh my goodness, what is happening? Is my game crashing? And then suddenly this majestic creature appeared on screen. That's a wow moment. I love those moments in video games.
Wonderfully said. How about you, Death?
As you guys have been talking, I've been trying to think about it, and same thing with Ezlo. I do listen to a lot of music from video games, including Zelda Ezlo,
Woot.
and it's so hard to nail down a favorite battle or town theme. Um, Town theme, I think I hate to pick the same answer as everybody else, but it's one of those things where Ecruteak City just has a legendary theme. And even though it's probably the most popular choice, I think it's the most popular for a reason because it's just so good and it fits the town theme so well. And as far as battle themes, though, I mean, Lance's theme immediately comes to mind, definitely. But there's also the Kanto Gym Leader theme that I love. If I really had to force myself to pick something, though, I might actually go with the Gen 2 rival theme because there was just something about the music of Gen 2 that hits different than any other generation. And I think that song really exemplifies the difference between other battle themes and Gen 2's battle themes. Don't get me wrong, Lance's theme is definitely a major highlight, and as much as I love that song, it's still very reminiscent of some Gen 1 battle themes, whereas the Rivals battle theme from Gen 2 is very distinctly a Gen 2 song. So that's probably the one I'd have to go for. Although I do want to give a quick shout out, kind of what you said when walking through the grass and running into the legendaries. That is a very hair-raising moment when you hear that theme and you go, oh my goodness, what's happening? I want to give a quick shout out to the battle theme of Kanto for wild Pokemon at night. I think it's different. I could be wrong if it's different. I feel like it's different, but you
don't
run into a
think it is.
Pokemon and it just has that something. Dun, 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 dun. It's just that little intro makes that song so special to me. The song itself is pretty good. It's great, but that intro just gets me every time.
So, awesome. Now that we have those questions, we've had some tough questions to answer as we go out. I think there's going to be some harder questions. But if I'm going to try to throw that at us here,
Before we move on to the next one, if I may, we talked about town and battle themes, but in general, if we could I'd like really quick everybody to say just a general song from Gen 2, because I feel it would be wrong for us to move on without mentioning things like the national park.
I was waiting for it.
Yep, SS Aqua, the surfing theme. Because personally, I'm a huge fan of things like Johto Route 38, which is where I found Magnemite in Gen 2. But I also just love the theme song there. And my favorite song of the entirety of Gen 2, The Lucky Channel. I love that song so much. I would put my Game Boy on and literally have it playing while I was doing something else, just listening to Lucky Channel. I love that song. Also known as the Game Corner theme of Gen 2.
Yeah, I have to shout out National Park. I was sitting here trying to rack my brain around like city themes specifically, and nothing came to mind. And of course, I think part of that is just because, like I said earlier, I don't have a lot of nostalgia for Johto in the same way that people who grew up with Gold, Silver, Crystal did. But National Park really just stuck out as the song of Johto for me.
Yeah, as soon as we talk about music in Gen 2, National Park, first song I thought of.
how about you, Ezlo?
And I think of the songs that terrified me as a child. So just the tinny quality of the 8-bit version on the original Game Boy sound chip of the Rocket HQ theme, where it had like lots of weird, I don't even know how to describe it, but just the way it came out of the speaker was so off-putting. It was very freaky, and I loved the arrangements of the music in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, but I was actually kind of disappointed because that arrangement I felt like took the edge off of that the original 8-bit version, and also the 8-bit version of the what is it, Dark Cave and Ice Path.
Yes.
Yeah,
I agree.
Also used to freak me out. And I'm still not sure why. Maybe because I associated it with pitch black darkness and things coming to get me. I don't know. I was like 5 or 6, but that music stuck with me for a very long time after. I love it now, but back then I would turn off the volume whenever I entered one of those locations again because it just freaked me out, and that's great. I admire that in composition and arrangement, because any music, even music that's 8-bit and only has a few channels to work with, especially uh, that can elicit that kind of strong emotion in me. That's grade A stuff right there.
I do want to actually agree with you on the Dark Cave. When I was a kid, I hated that song. And then as I got older, I was like, you know what? This song fits so well. It is such a brooding theme. It's perfect.
And I think the other thing is like it's reused between Dark and Ice Cave, but it somehow fits for both. I think that's what really sticks out for me.
Although I do like how, I believe it's Heart Gold Soul Silver, they gave it a different type of sound font for the Ice Cave. It makes it a lot more, I don't know what you want to say, tingly or whatever. Either way, still a great choice for that game as well.
I just thought of another one, the Ruins of Alf theme, the 8-bit Ruins of Alf theme.
Yeah.
That one goes hard.
Love that. It's actually, and going back to what Ezra said about the unsettling theme of Rocket Hideout, which absolutely agree about, the unsettling theme of Ruins of Alf, it's still creepy in its own way, and that's something I love about that.
All right. I could definitely chat about this on and on. I am gonna give a quick shout out to. I know it's not always what everyone thinks about, but I love I feel like when we're talking about iconic music, and I want to make sure to get to a couple other questions here tonight, but the starting town music in Kanto and Johto holds a very near dear to my heart, especially in Heart Gold, Soul Silver. I have found myself just chilling out to that game, being played with that. But with that though, I know that kind of counts towards cities, but I do want to kind of move us on. We have so many great ideas, and we will definitely be doing a part 2 of this at some point here soon. But there's a few things that I really want to hit on. One of them being the kind of influence of Johto. I know we've talked briefly about Hoenn, and we'll do a Hoenn chat at some point, I'm sure. But when we think of Johto, is it the most influential early gen game? And when I say early gen, I'm thinking just Kanto, Johto, Hoenn. What are your thoughts on this? And I'm actually going to start with Death.
I think that's actually a pretty difficult question to answer because in my head, when I think early gen, I think Gen 1 and 2 are in their own category, whereas Gen 3, I think, was the start of the kind of sort of modern gen, because Gen 3 gave us an astounding amount of additions, such as abilities, IVs, EVs, contact moves, etc., etc. So to put it in the same category as Gen 2, for me personally, I don't think they can really compare. However, when thinking about this question, it actually made me realize that there's actually still so many things from Gen 2 that were major introductions to the series, such as gender, breeding, different evolutions, split evolutions. There are a lot of things, but could I honestly say it's the most influential? Honestly, I think that of the question, I think Gen 3 is more influential, as most of those changes stuck, and we still use them to this day, as opposed to Gen 2. I forgot to mention the special split, which is obviously huge. But Gen 2, I feel, is kind of the peak like it's sort of, what Gen 1 was aspiring to be, whereas Gen 3 was the start of what we know today.
And I think that's a
Oh yes,
very
held items
valid.
from Shark King in the chat. Excuse me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. Part of the reason I am breaking up Kanto, Johto, and Hoenn together, just for clarification of everyone, is partly on the concept that we are in the 9th generation right now. So I'm trying to break them up 1 through 3, 3 through 6. I mean, anyways, we'll figure it out. Trying to break them up by number. But as we go, I think, Death, you make some great points. And I can always simplify this down. But Ezlo, I want to go to you, see if you agree or disagree.
I mean, I pretty much 100% agree. I think that Gens 1 and 2 very much stand together as their own sort of era. And then Gen 3, from the stuff they took away to the tons and tons of things that they added, really made that feel like that was the beginning of what we now know. So yeah, I really don't actually have that much to add there.
Oh, it's fantastic. Thank you both for sharing. And so, kind of moving on through a different mindset connecting to future generations. And I'll definitely give clarification on this. So, in my mind personally, and I think others, Sinnoh and Johto are extremely connected in a variety of ways, from future evolutions to well, I don't even know if the Hisuian forms are paradox or not, to a wide variety of other connections with, Jasmine showing up in Sunny Shore City and many other connections, as well as the remakes. So in that mindset, do we think the Pokemon Company has done this relationship justice over the years? And Esla, I'm going to go to you first.
That's sort of, I don't know, that's more going into the sort of deep lore theorizing stuff that I tend not to engage with because it hurts my brain. I feel like I didn't really pick up on a lot of the Johto Sinnoh relationship until the Arceus event in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, where you got to go to the Sinjo ruins, which was like, oh wait, these are actually related regions. But in hindsight, yes, there are a lot of little things that they drop, like like the evolve forms and I Jasmine showing up was kind of a weird one for me that went completely over my head when I first played Diamond. I feel like if they really want to establish that connection, then they should go even further and have something like the Sinjo ruins in the actual body of the game as opposed to being an event exclusive uh bonus, if you will. But yeah, I don't know. Never really thought about it all that much.
All right. Awesome. How about you, Death?
we've gone this far, but it's finally time for a potentially a classic Magnedeth hot take. Those connections, in my opinion, are entirely forced and manufactured and borderline unnecessary. Because you want to randomly put Jasmine in Sinnoh, that's fine. There's really no reason for it, you know? Like, what particular reason was she there for? So the connection was so loose that it wasn't until you started going more into it that I really understood what you were talking about, if I'm honest. Uh, because I feel like that connection is wafer thin at best. That said, if I do have to end on a positive note, I do like the idea that it got them to think, and by them I mean Game Freak, to think, how can we better connect some of our regions going forward? And if I'm honest, I think they need to keep doing that because I don't feel like they've really done it. I do want to see other trainers and gym leaders and references to other games and regions in all the games. I don't want them to be in there just to be a tee hee. We're gonna have a game coming out, so we're gonna throw these random trainers or references into this game. I don't know. There's no reason not to have references to other games, regions, and series, and we have gotten more of them, but I want even more of them because the Pokemon world is getting huge at this point. I mean, it already is kind of huge. So why do we need to force these random connections when they should just be organic as they are? Um, I hope that was an appropriate answer to the question.
I always appreciate honesty. I'm gonna say I like the connections, especially as they may feel wafer thin to some. I've always noticed it from when the Johto remakes came. It was a generation of Sinnoh. I like finding connections and things that other people may not pay attention to, so I spend a lot of my time doing that. But I think there is some validity in both of what you said. And as we go, though, I'm just going to highlight I enjoy seeing the interconnected way of the Pokemon world. I do think they need to improve it and kind of make it flesh out. I know that they tend to want a region to stay the region. Part of the reason I love Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon is getting to see all the alternate evil teams. But as we go, I know we have one more check-in with our chat, and I'd love to see if anyone has joined in any of this conversation. Caps, how are we looking?
Yeah, so we started from our last check-in. We started with some shiny stories, reminiscing about unlucky and lucky moments. People in chat talking about losing to knocking them out, losing them to Safari Zone, similar to whoever said that earlier. I think it was you, Rhode. And after that, the music discussion. Some other themes that got mentioned that we didn't really talk about. Goldenrod City. I want to specifically shout that one out because after thinking about it a bit more, that theme did come to mind for me. So I would probably pick that one as my favorite city theme. Also, the Red final battle music. I think you guys touched on a really good point about the kind of like roaming Pokemon music being so staunchly different from the generic encounter music. And I think to a lesser degree, the Red battle theme is also similarly staunchly different and kind of is like one of those whoa moments. And of course, like we can go on and on about talking about Red in general and his appearances in this game, his effect on players. But I do want to shout out that theme as well. It's really good. And then last but not least, we did get a raid from Michael Smell, so I wanted to shout that out. Thank you, Michael, for the raid. And Michael piped in and said that after I asked what their favorite starter was, they said Chikorita if I'm ignoring evolutions, Totodile if I'm including them. And you know what? I'll take it. I'll take that one. That's a solid answer. Very fair. I'll take it.
Absolutely.
That's all I got.
Awesome. I love it. And so I want to end us on a large happy note. And we've talked about so many different things. I know for the sake of time, for our audience, for our cast, I want to be considerate. And there is so much more that we could touch on. And we've talked about Giovanni. But one question I have that I think is going to really end this on a high note is the idea, what is your hope? If you could have a Johto remake that honors the source material, has the same compassion, the same love, the same dedication that we've gotten in a new fashion, maybe for the Switch 2 or whatever it could be, your wildest dreams, what would that be? I'm going to start with Death.
The short answer is give me Pokemon Legends Arceus with, Johto. Like, man, that'd be incredible to just freely explore Johto. If I had to give a more realistic answer, I feel like Heart Gold and Soul Silver are very nearly perfect remakes, and only a select few tweaks could truly make them basically perfect. Some Pokemon placement could be a little bit better. Item placement in Heart Gold Soul Silver is honestly kind of terrible, but yeah, kind of as Shark King points out in the chat, I think another Johto remake might not really be necessary per se if it were normal. So to directly answer the question, I kind of already think Heart Gold Soul Silver is already basically perfect. Could use a little tweaks, but otherwise it's great. However, if I were going to have another game in Johto, give me something PLA-esque.
Ezlo, what about you?
I'm actually in a similar boat. I think Heart Gold and Soul Silver were kind of were perfect, at least for me. I there probably are problems with the item placement. I just didn't notice them because I had nostalgia glasses on the whole time. But I feel like they really went all out on paying homage to the source material while also bringing it what was it, like 10 years into the future at the time. And I feel like I could just take that again, just, I don't know, on modern hardware. Just, give us modern graphics or not. I don't really care. Make the music sound crisper. And that's my ideal remake. Because they included pretty much everything from Gold and Silver, and they also incorporated the vast majority of the new stuff from Crystal, which later remakes did not do. And yeah, and it's just they had new stuff that was all worthwhile. It was fun. It was kind of a massive game if you think about it. I don't know what they could possibly add to make it better.
Awesome. I love it. So, for the sake of our cast, for the sake of our audience, I am going to start wrapping us up for the evening. I know people have work. We have had an amazing chat going throughout. I know that I've engaged the Twitch chat a few times, but I just want to say if you're listening to us on YouTube, we want to say thank you to you as well. A YouTube specific question that I was wondering for people as we go, and you're listening on YouTube, please let us know if you've made it this far. If you like Clodsire or Paldean Wooper better. And if you don't want to answer that, it might be too hard. Let us know what you'd want to see in a part 2. As we begin to wrap, though, I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to do an outro. As always, I'm Roadhawk. Once again, I do our Pokemon Masters videos on our YouTube channel. I am the host here. Always grateful for you to be here. The icebreaker that I have for tonight, well, the outro question I have for tonight is simply Hisuian Sneasel or Hisuian Quillfish. Which do you like better? This is a hard choice for me, but I do like Hisuian Sneasel better. Death, what about you? And would you outro for us?
That is actually a genuinely difficult choice because I like both of them. I think I would have to go with Hisuian Sneasel and Sneasler. I do want to make it clear I like both of them, and I also like Overquill as well. But Sneasler, I like fighting types right off the bat. And also, I kind of have a unique soft spot for hideously ugly Pokemon, and I think Sneasler is really ugly, and that means I like it. Look at me, the guy who also likes, Magnemite and one of the ugliest Pokemon of all time, Sandy Shocks. So, it is what it is. That said, my outro, I'm Magnedeth. You can check me out on Blue Sky, and I also stream on Twitch on Wednesday nights. Probably gonna add another stream at some point, but long story short, that's who I am. Come check me out, and I want to thank Rhode, Hawk, and Caps for having me, and it's been a lot of fun.
And Caps, would you be willing to give your 2 cents on that outro question and let people know where they can find you?
Actually, can I toss it over to Ezlo first? That just so I can outro out with some Twitch announcements as well.
I was looking at Ezlo and I said your name. All right, Ezlo,
That's
your turn.
awkward. All right, yeah, I'm EzloSpirit. As for the question, I'd probably say Sneasel, just because I feel like I've seen it more. I don't know. I never really thought about that before, but no, Sneasler is not ugly. Sneasler is adorable, as are almost every single species of Pokemon. I will stand by this, even though it doesn't really make sense.
Even Sandy Shocks.
I can't even picture that one in my head. That sounds like a Paradox Pokemon, and
It is, yeah.
it sounds like one from Scarlet, and I have not seen enough of those to even remember. But yes, probably. It's not Mewtwo. Mewtwo is ugly. Anyway,
True.
that's fine. Oh, there's a picture. Aw, the one on top is a little smile. Adorable. Love it. No notes.
This Ezlo's got a heart of gold, guys.
Yeah. Yes, I do.
I see what you
It's
did
my
there.
thing.
Hey, you.
Yeah, so anyway, I'm EzloSpirit. You can find me on the Bulbagarden Discord server, probably saying something about Togepi or how cute just about every species of Pokemon besides Mewtwo is. I've said it several times there, and I'll continue to. Anyway, you can also find me if you are a Zelda fan. I am on the ZeldaUniverse.net forums, where I moderate the Creative Corner forum, and I don't really have a social media presence outside of Bulbagarden and Zelda Universe. So hopefully I'll see you in those places? ? That's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Caps, I'll pass it to you.
All right. Well, I'll kick things off by answering the outro question, which clever on you, Rhode, to pick 2 alternate forms of Johto Pokemon. I'm gonna go with Quillfish against my better judgment, because technically, according to Bulbagarden Twitch canon, Sneasler is apparently my wife. So I am cheating on Sneasler with Quillfish. But I do think it's cooler, and I like its little symbol on its tail. It's pretty cool. Anyway, my name's Caps. Like I said at the beginning, you can find me here on the Bulbagarden Twitch Thursdays and Saturdays. You can find my Blue Sky and my personal Twitch channel info in the page under my name down below. And yeah, I'll go ahead and let you guys know some upcoming events on our Twitch channel. We've got my stream tomorrow morning with Mystery Dungeon, so be sure to show up if you want to see some of that. Then we've also got Dawning Winds tomorrow evening with some sketching Saturdays for you. Maybe I'll poke her to draw some Johto Pokemon. And then rounding out the weekend, we've got Maniacal Engineer with more 7.8 out of 10 water type, monotype challenge in Alpha Sapphire, I think it is, that he's playing. So be sure to show up for that as well on Sunday morning. But yeah, that's all I've got, Rhode. Take us out.
Absolutely. Once again, thank you everyone for being on. This was a particularly great conversation. As a reminder, wherever you are listening, wherever you are, just know we appreciate you, as well as we will be doing a 2.0 version of this conversation. We will also have more unique cast ideas coming up to you and coming to you. We will also potentially have some very cool things coming up very soon that I do not want to highlight, but I do want to put a little bit of a teaser out there for you. With that, we wish you the very best. Have a wonderful night, and thank you for being you.
Cheers, guys. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.